Hello and welcome to the 12th instalment of this exciting series of shows sponsored by Dublin City Comics and Collectibles, where we, the full force, take an in-depth look at the old Action Force comics in no particular order. We are currently making our way through the first Action Force mini-comics in this special sub-series of shows, and now we get to the third of 5 issues. I am Chris, Desert Victory McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me on this new episode, as always, is Brian Quicksand McHickey. So let's get on with it, shall we? Mini explosion.
For this episode, we visit the Deep Sahara in the third mini-comic with a story entitled Desert Victory! Originally published in 1983 and presented free with battle number 432.
Credits include writer, uncredited, possibly Jerry Day. Artist, uncredited, possibly Vanyo. Letterer, uncredited. Colours, uncredited.
The cast includes, for Z-Force, Captain Grant James Campbell, codename Skip, Jeep driver Fritz Van Yek, codename Wheels, possibly Battle Tank Commander Andreas Stakis, codename Steeler, Undercover Commando Hedda L. Pulver, codename Quarrel, and Z-Force Troops.
For the Red Shadows, we have Red Vulture and the Red Shadow Troops.
And with the vehicles, we have for Z-Force, the Z-Force Jeep, the Z-Force Battle Tank, and the Rapid Fire Motorcycle.
And for the Red Shadows, the Shadow Track.
Our story synopsis: Z-Force are operating in the Deep Sahara for desert training, unaware of the dangers that await them in the form of hidden Red Shadow troops.
So, I noticed in this particular, the start of this issue, that Z-Force are picked off pretty easily, and yet again fooled by very poorly disguised Red Shadows who are wearing all of their gear under their disguises. I feel like that was used so many times in this story, in this run of comics. There was the kind of, you know, I think we saw it in the Red Jackal story we covered, where they were doing the same thing. They had all their gear on, but they had this disguise on top. Yeah,
that's right. It's kind of the classic Red Shadow disguises. They're always in full uniform. In fact, there's very few stories where we see the Red Shadows, would say, with their helmets off. Now, there are stories for sure, but certainly in these early comics and the very first stories, the Red Shadows were always kitted up with the helmet on all the time. And, Action Force, like, we know these guys are supposed to be the best, but they walk into a couple of really obvious traps early on in this story. And
we also get a slightly revised yell of blood for the Baron, which is blood for the Baron. So they're kind of playing fast and loose with the call there a little bit, aren't they?
Yeah, and that made me wonder if this really was someone like, Jerry Day, who did, because obviously we have no idea who's done the writing on this. We're totally speculating in that regard. But it's certainly, they're a bit free and loose with the classic Red Shadow battle cry.
So Skip and Wheels go ahead to recon the area, and multiple Red Shadow teams attack isolated Z-Force troops, picking them off in small groups.
So we've got a scene here where we have the classic Z-Force battle tank, and they're investigating a well. The Red Shadows just jump out of the well.
Well.
Hey. And it looks like we've got Steeler in the battle tank, but we don't get any sense that these Z-Force troops have survived. So I wonder if maybe it's not Steeler per se, but just another tank driver within the Z-Force ranks.
Because, I mean, they're basically, there's a panel there with about 4 or 5 of them, and they're all just wearing the same gear. So it's just like, well, the battle tank guys, they all have the same uniform. The infantry guys, one who gets taken out on the motorbike, obviously he is just a standard infantryman. So like they do that with the figures. They kind of make it so that, yes, this is a named character, but you can also army build them, I suppose, and that's probably what they're getting at that stage. But anyway, yeah, could be Steeler, but it's probably not, based on the fact that he is a named character. And again, we get another revised battle cry. So this time it's for the Baron, blood for the Baron. So again, I suppose it's making it a little bit more realistic. It's in the heat of the battle, they're kind of just saying what they want to say, really.
Yeah, it's you've got to imagine like it's full on conflict here. That the element of surprise is now gone, and maybe they're just getting a bit carried away.
I would say the wellement of surprise. Yeah.
Oh, that's a classic.
Wellement, amazing.
It's how you tell them. It's how you tell them.
And I should stop telling them.
With Z-Force getting picked off, Skip and Wheels find themselves in similar trouble, but they manage to escape an ambush by Red Shadows on Camelback, only to have their radio damaged.
And that makes a lot more sense as we go on with the story, because obviously they'd make a big point of, the radio's taken out, and that's because obviously they don't want them getting that information out to the rest of the team. What little do they know, they've probably been isolated anyway from the rest of their team. They probably don't realise that the rest of their team's been destroyed. But yeah, this is really cool, and we learn a little bit more about Wheels here as an ex-Dutch army soldier with very good driving skills, don't we?
This is a great little sequence here. The driving skills. I mean, obviously, it's in the text. Like we get a bit of background. The ex-Dutch army soldier showed his skill, but the visuals of the artist here, presumably Vanyo, really brings this whole sequence to life. With you can almost hear that Z-Force Jeep screech in reverse, swivel around 180 degrees and head out the opposite direction. And this leads into an amazing panel where we have the Z-Force Jeep speeding across the desert, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shadow tracks pursuing it with these dust clouds or plumes of kind of sand coming up behind them.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing panel, amazing action sequence here.
So seemingly cut off and isolated, Skip and Wheels are subsequently followed by a team of Red Shadows in shadow tracks, as you quite so eloquently put it. So Skip orders Wheels to head for a specific spot on the map in an attempt to lure the Red Shadows into a trap.
After a 10-minute chase, Wheels slams on the brakes and the two watch as the shadow tracks fly past them, falling into a huge patch of quicksand. Red Vulture avoids the same fate as the other troops and lets the readers know that there will be more Red Shadow troops waiting for Skip and Wheels in the next town.
It's the dreaded quicksand.
There's even a sign.
I know, it's brilliant. And again, I was watching QI when I was in the UK. I tend to do that when I'm in the UK. When I'm back in on home soil, I'll watch all of the kind of TV quiz shows and stuff that you don't get out here, and QI is one of them. And they were talking about quicksand. That was like, I think the question was like, can you die in it? And everyone just assumed, you would just be sucked underneath and drown. But apparently quicksand doesn't work that way. And in actual fact, I don't think there's been in terms of drowning in quicksand, I don't think there's actually been a recorded death of that happening. So
really?
What it is that quicksand is usually, they show the details of why you don't drown in it. One, because it doesn't ever get deep enough, and two, because your body, in general, you're always going to be buoyant on it anyway, because it's not, like how you'll drop into water, obviously, because you're heavier than the water around you.
It's the density of it.
Exactly.
Support you.
So with quicksand, you get stuck, but you'll die of starvation before you die of drowning in it. So yeah.
Okay. Wow. Listeners, what an amazing piece of information. Thanks to Stephen Fry and the team on QI. One of my favourite shows. Love that show.
It's great.
But of course, in this case here, the Red Shadows don't actually need to die. Just their shadow tracks just get stuck.
Yeah.
But, again, this is a classic trait here. Red Vulture doesn't get trapped in the quicksand, but he doesn't pursue the guys. He doesn't pursue Z-Force after that. He's got his shadow track. We know they're armed with missiles and cannons on the back. Doesn't go after the Z-Force Jeep. He just waves his fist at them and says, "We'll get you in the next town."
Yeah, it's classic bad guy action, isn't it? I wonder if he's thinking because his team has dwindled, he doesn't want to take them on one-on-one. That's probably got something to do with it there. I like how he calls Z-Force Z-Team. I thought that was really
Z-Men.
Really cute.
It's not over yet, Z-Men. That's like some 1950s spy thing or something. The Z-Men.
I definitely saw him call them Z-Team somewhere, but maybe I just read that incorrectly. Yeah, Z-Men. Really weird, that. Really weird. I should mention here that obviously Red Vulture was supplied with the shadow track, And in some instances, because obviously it was basically a repainted Red Shadow with black gloves. And I should note that some Shadow tracks actually did come with the standard Red Shadow figure as well, just in classic Palitoy fashion.
Okay, yes, yeah.
And the same, we can also talk about the Z-Force Jeep as well, in that Wheels was a repainted infantryman, and some Jeeps actually did come with the standard infantryman figure. So, you know, if you're lucky or unlucky in that sense, depending on which figure you wanted. But yeah, in some cases, I guess they just sometimes maybe overcooked or undercooked some of the repaints, and then thought, well, we need to throw an infantryman in. You know, we don't have enough wheels, but we have enough infantrymen to go in there.
Well, in 1983, if you got a bog standard Red Shadow with Shadow track, you were going to be unlucky. In 2020, if you get a bog standard Red Shadow with your Shadow track mint in box, you're really lucky.
And you'll never know unless you open it. Some hours later, Skip and Wheels find themselves in the nearest town and head to a local bar to meet a Z-Force agent, where they will be able to radio for help. While they wait for their contact, the Z-Force operatives decide to have a drink and enjoy the belly dancing on stage. That one dude in that panel looks like Dr. Doom. When I first turned the page, I was like, you know, it's kind of like the kind of tealy green looking dude who's got his face in the bottom corner of the panel when the guys turn up in the Z-Force Jeep in the town. And I looked at it, I was like, I could have to do a double take. I'm like, is that Dr. Doom? I was like, no, it's not. It's just some dude with like really interesting shading going on. In
fairness, the colorist really went to town with the green. So there's a lot of green in this.
So much green.
But yeah, that guy, and the particular shade of green in this character is very Doctor Doom. That's the Pantone reference. Pantone Doctor Doom.
Dr. Pantoum. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and obviously, and Wheels, just thinking about watching dances and having drinks the whole time. It's like, mate, he's on the prize.
Like, he's completely forgotten about the entire life-threatening situation that he's just escaped from. And you would imagine one of the first things, well, I mean, Skip has got his, you know, he's on the ball. Maybe with Skip, you know, being on duty, maybe you can afford to relax. I don't know. He's the man's man. Let's have a drink and watch the dancer.
And have a
Out of nowhere, more disguised Red Shadows appear and attack Skip and Wheels, killing the waiter with their drinks as a result. So I read that wrong. That sounds like they killed the waiter with their drinks. They killed the waiter with
their drinks. I prefer that. No, don't change it. That's perfect. Obviously, yeah, killing the waiter with their drinks because the waiter's got their drinks, but they didn't actually kill him with their drinks, which would have been hilarious. We finally get our first Wilhelm scream here as well. It's taken enough time, I think, but we get almost like a double barrel, i.e. we get that one, and then like the next panel we also get another one as well. But yeah, just when you think they are done for, a mysterious figure appears and takes out the two Red Shadow assailants with throwing knives, only to be revealed as Quarrel. Like I said, Wilhelm scream number 2, but also Quarrel saving the day and literally flexing her undercover ops muscles, I think, and out disguising the Red Shadows for a change.
So, I mean, obviously what's revealed here is that the dancer on the stage, which was being oogled by Wheels, was actually Quarrel.
Lols.
And she totally drops the two Red Shadows with her expert knife throwing skills, saving both Wheels and Skip, and just generally kind of kicking Red Shadow ass.
I like how she, you know, like has hardly been in the story, and she has literally just sorted everything out. Like she's just dealt with all of the issues in this situation, and Skip and Wheels are just like, oh, but we've been busy getting drinks and checking you out on the stage and getting our asses handed to us the rest of the time. And she just turns
totally
and goes,
caught off guard as well. Oh
boom,
my god.
Just kills it.
So Quarrel attempts to get the radio message out to warn Action Force, but desert storms are causing them issues with static. The story ends with Skip holding a top-secret Action Force report telling Quarrel to inform the base that Baron Armblood must be alive and that the desert can't be the only place he's planted his Red Shadows. Skip highlights the fact that Action Force must live up to their name and be ready to go into action at any moment.
I don't think they need any other troops. I think Quarrel just does everything. And she's operating the radio here as well, and these utterly useless just watching, going, yeah, we can't do this, so you're going to have to do it. So not only is she turned up, she's done undercover ops, she's kind of blended in, she's in disguise, she's taken out red shadows with blades, she's now like radioing in for them. It's like, what is the point of the other guys? Like, I don't even know.
She's the best.
She really is
totally the best.
She's like all in this story, she's just basically shown that she is the best operative that Action Force have. I love that top secret Action Force eyes only document that Skip's reading. It's so like Mission Impossible or like James Bond, isn't it?
That's a nice little touch, you know. I mean, it's very of the time, but it's like, say, Mission Impossible. It's a great kind of reference for that. You know, once they've read that report, they've got to destroy it, or it self explodes.
It kind of looks a little bit like a vinyl record he's got as well. Like he's about to bust out the classic. A classic from the Action Force team called Eyes Only from the Top Secret album. That's what it should be. It's the Top Secret album. The band is Action Force, and the song is Eyes Only.
Oh, classic!
Amazing.
It's the 12-inch remix version. Where this story leaves us is that there's now, if we go flashback to the last Disorder battle, where Eagle realizes that Ironblood's back, but he's trapped in the jungle. There's no way of getting a message out, and he could be there for weeks trying to find his way out of the jungle.
Yeah.
Z-Force now have the same realization, and while they may not be trapped for weeks, they're certainly looking at potentially hours or maybe a day or so until the static clears before they can get the word out. So even though there's awareness now amongst Action Force, Ironblood's return is still very much a secret at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, he's contemplating the fact that Ironblood must be alive and that the Red Shadows are actually going to be all over the place, and they don't know how to deal with it. So it's kind of Action Force are in a difficult situation and also taking huge casualties. The Red Shadows are building momentum. Action Force is splintered across the globe and are struggling to communicate. They will have to raise their game, I think, if they want to kind of quash the threat and save the world. But it kind of puts it into a pretty decent position, like kind of sets it up nicely, doesn't it?
The situation is looking more and more grim for Action Force, really, at this stage. So we have to find out on the next issue of Disorder Battle how things are going to pan out for Action Force.
Incidentally, if you're listening along and you can hear scratching in the background, that's because my dog Max has decided to come into the room I'm recording in and go to town on the carpet. So he's literally just scratching away. So I'm not going to bother even trying to stop him now. I'm just going to let it happen. Right, so so I mean, we've come to the end of another episode of Disorder of Battle with Max scratching in the background again. What are your thoughts overall on this one, just quickly, Brian?
I think this is a great trip down memory lane. Haven't read this comic in decades, and seeing the artwork, it's beautiful. I mean, I do feel that this is Vanyo's work here. The action sequences are really on point. I mean, it just in such a small canvas to capture so much energy. It's fantastic. And the story albeit it's a very simple kind of story, it just shows that it's setting the scene for Ironblood's big comeback, and Action Force they've got their backs against the wall so far.
I quite liked it. I think it's a small, fun kind of like action-packed kind of issue. I love the little mini comics. I mean, there were 3 mini comics in with Battle at the time. This one came with issue 432, which has got an amazing cover. Is it Johnny Red
Johnny
cover?
Red, yes.
With
Johnny
the plane,
classic.
like the Spitfire, just absolutely zipping away. Just really, really cool cover. But the actual mini comic cover is really cool as well. That's something we didn't discuss before. But it's got like the kind of tilted Action Force branding across the top, much like the Action Force toy boxes and stuff like that with the red and the yellow. It's got Z-Force in big bold letters in the bottom left-hand corner. This explosive panel kind of shape. And then the Z-Force Jeep bursting out of it with all sorts of carnage going on in the background. So, yeah, really nice cover too.
Just to weigh in there, right? That is, to get that comic free with your weekly comic back in 1983 was a major bonus.
Oh, big time.
Remember, that comic was black and white. As in the main Battle comic was in black and white. To get this full colour,
yeah.
Maybe 12 pages in there. That was an amazing thing to get. If you were in Ireland or Britain.
Massive.
Back in the 80s, it was great.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that brings us to the end of this particular issue. We're going to be looking almost immediately at the Q-Force story, which follows this one. And then shortly after that one, we have the final issue. So it's a nice little 5-parter. And this one sits in there nicely and sets up the next story quite well. And again, we're seeing all of the different factions kind of highlighted. We saw Red Shadows and Space Force in the first issue. We saw SAS Force. We saw Z Force in this issue. The next one we've got is Q Force. I mean, I suppose we might as well just get straight back into that one then, Brian. Thanks for jumping on and chatting on this Disorder of Battle episode again.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure. That's it for this rather mini instalment of Disorder of Battle. Thank you to my co-host Brian Hickey and to our sponsors Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. See you next time, and as always,
blood for the Baron.
I was going to say full Quarrel Force. Ooh. Quarrel Force makes sense because she's just so dominant. But anyway, yeah. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. Located at 46 Bolton Street, Inns Quay, Dublin 1, Ireland, you can visit their website at dublincitycomics.ie and on Facebook at facebook.com/Dublin City Comics.